During the time of the Giami Federation, long before its fall and rise of those who were Giami in name only, there was a state called Dikni that was ruled by King Timek. This was a wise king, and he had benefited like his ancestors before him by being part of the Federation. This king was very old, and he knew that he did not have that much time left on this earth. He only had one son, and since he was born late in the king's life, he had no experience in governing. King Timek felt that it was only right that Prince Nak prove his worthiness for his throne. The king prepared the things his son would need for this adventure in advance. The king sent a message for Nak to present himself before him at sunset. Nak reported to his father at the appointed time and bowed before his father. Father, you have summoned me and I have come. How may I be of service to you? After making the statement, he rose to his feet and looked his father in the eyes. Then King Timek threw his arms up and his son approached the throne, and the king rose and the two embraced. The king took his son's hand and led him into the library so that they could talk. They took a seat at one of the tables in the library, and the king began talking. My son, I am not long for this world, and when I pass, you may receive this responsibility. But I feel that you are not ready for this position as of yet. Nak, listening to his father intently, began to smile. Father, what do I need to do to get ready for this challenge? For my whole life I have dreamed of being king. I know that it is a hard job being the servant of the people, but I am willing to do what I need to do. King Timek smiled at his son. It was the kind of smile that a father has when their son accomplishes a task triumphantly. I'm glad you asked, my son. You have to prove yourself, because the final decision of who takes the throne when I pass away is in the hands of the women in our family. You need to go on a quest and bring back a story and proof of the truth of the story to share with me and my sisters. That will be enough, I believe, to guarantee that you become king of this land. Prince Nak sat quietly and thought about what his father was telling him. Father, I am willing to do what you suggest, but what should I do? Come to me in the morning at sunrise, and I will have everything ready for you. Pack yourself a sack of food and bring nothing else. Nak went to his room, and prepared himself, knowing what was to happen or become of him. He went to prepare as he was told and got some rest, and when the sun rose, he was awaiting his father. When his father walked in the throne room, Nak bowed. Father, I await your command and guidance. King Timek approached his son and gave him a hug. My son, I have prepared all that you need for your quest. Here is a sword that I received from my father, as he did from his father before him. Here is a bag of gold, and lastly, in the stables I have selected a horse for you. You will get on the horse and ride out into the world. You will go outside of the Federation land and ride into your adventure. You must have belief that what you need will find you. Nak heard the instructions and went out to the horse. When he saw the horse that his father picked out for him, he was shocked. It was less of a horse and more of a mule. When he looked into the stables and saw the beautiful horses, he wondered why his father would pick this old pack horse for his quest. Nak destroyed any negative thoughts he had about the horse and decided to be grateful for what he did have. He figured that his father could have sent him out on foot. Prince Nak climbed on his steed and set out. He rode from sunrise to noon and decided to allow his steed to rest and eat. He got off the horse and looked around and found a place to water and feed his horse. Afterwards, he sought out signs to tell him where he was, and he discovered he was still on Federation land. He ate, climbed back on his steed, and rode till sunset, and he found a place for him and his horse to rest for the night. He let his horse graze and drink water while he built a fire for the night. He laid down under the stars thinking about the adventures that awaited him. When he awoke in the morning, he looked for signs of where he was and found out that he was still on Federation lands. He boarded his horse and began to ride into Newton and gave himself and the horse a break. Finding that he was still on Federation land, he set out again on his horse. This went on for 5 days before he was no longer on Federation land. He rode for another 5 days looking for an adventure, but nothing happened. He stopped under a big, beautiful tree for the night. After feeding and watering his horse, he built a fire and went to sleep while counting stars in the night sky. The morning came and Prince Snack rose to find that during the night his horse had died. Saddened by this turn of events, he said a few words over the body of the horse out of respect for how far it got him on his journey. He then proceeded to bury the body with stones, for it was a disrespectful act to leave a body, even of a horse, that you had a connection with to be unburied. After he completed this task, he ate his lunch and continued on his journey. Prince Snack was surprised about how he felt. Rather than being upset by the death of the horse and his lack of transportation, he felt good. He felt that he was blessed because he was able to walk a long distance, and that he knew that as he was seeking his adventure was also seeking him. He walked for 3 days, and although he had the gold to buy another horse, he felt that it was unnecessary. As nighttime approached, Snack observed a building in the distance and figured that he would seek shelter within its walls for the night. When he approached the building, he noticed that it was standing alone. No other buildings around. And this struck him as strange, but he ignored the warning feelings. He was excited about the fact that he would be able to have shelter for at least one night. He looked in the window, and the place looked empty and abandoned. And when he knocked on the door, it opened. He put his hand on his sword and entered. When he got inside, he noticed that the building was separated into 6 small rooms and totally empty. So he picked a room to the back of the building and laid his pallet down. He found a corner, buried his gold, and placed his sword where it could be quickly accessed. The prince fell into a deep sleep, and eventually he was disturbed by a loud thump. At first he thought that he was dreaming, so he just rolled over and closed his eyes. Once again he heard the thump, but this time it shook the floor. He immediately grabbed his sword and slowly walked through the dark. He could see a light in one of the rooms, and he slowly crept and looked into the room. He was shocked by what he witnessed. 3 men digging up what looked like a grave. The prince suddenly realized he must have chosen to sleep in a house for the dead. The men didn't see him, and they completed their task. They were digging up a body. At first, the prince did not know what to do, but when he witnessed them removing the body from the grave, he immediately jumped into action. In Dictum, it is a sacrilege to disturb the dead, and he, as a prince of the Dictum, could not allow this crime to go unpunished. So he drew his sword and entered the room yelling, "This is a sacrilege. I will not allow you to disrespect the dead in such a fashion." At first the men were scared, but they got bold when they figured out that the prince was alone. "Why are you desecrating this grave and putting your own souls at risk?" One of the men spoke up to Prince Snack. "This man died owing us money, and because of him we are all now in poverty. And since we cannot make him pay in this life, we will make him pay in the next. We are going to throw his body into the woods so that the animals can have it, and thereby filling his afterlife with sorrow." Prince Snack thought about what he could say to these men to change their minds about their action. To show them that he meant no harm, he put his sword away. "Are you men willing to trade your own soul in for this action?" All 3 of them began to laugh and looked at the prince. "Our souls are not in danger for serving this man his just reward for dying in debt." Prince Snack thought about what they had said and remembered that he was not in his motherland. And he had heard that within the world, different people have different beliefs. "Please tell me, how much did this man owe you?" "He owed us 30 pieces of gold." "If I pay you, will you put his poor soul back into the ground with the proper respect and honor that he deserves?" They looked at each other and began to whisper among themselves. The representative of the group looked at the prince and shook his head, "Yes." The prince then went immediately for his gold his father had given him that was hidden in the room he was sleeping in. He got the money and counted out what they were owed. He had exactly 30 pieces of gold. They immediately buried the body of the dead man and went on their way. The prince went back to his room and went to sleep. Upon rising in the morning, although the prince had given away all his money, he felt good. His heart was light, and he had a burst of energy that he decided that he would use to continue on his journey. He paid his respects to the burial house and all that were laid to rest within its walls, and asked for forgiveness for intruding on their space, for he did not know it was a burial house. He walked away and continued on his journey. The prince came upon a road that seemed to stretch into the horizon and decided to take it. As he walked, he paid close attention to all that went on around him because he did not want to be surprised by bandits. He checked around him as he walked, and he could see for miles in all directions, for the road led onto a great plain. As he walked, he would constantly look behind him to make sure that he was alone on the road. He walked for what seemed like hours when from behind him he heard a voice calling out to him. The prince immediately put his hand on his sword and turned to face whoever was running up on him. "Halt, sir, and come no closer. Who are you and where did you come from?" The stranger stopped and put his hands in the air to let the prince know he meant no harm, nor did he have any weapons. "Sir, I am a traveler like yourself. I have been behind you for a while and figured that since we were walking in the same direction, we could share company." The prince grabbed his sword tighter and looked at the man with anger. "Well, traveler, that is impossible because I have been checking in all directions for miles and I did not see anyone behind me for hours." "Well, fellow traveler, you must have missed me because I've been behind you for quite a while." The prince thought about what he said and dismissed his uneasy feeling and considered that it was possible that he did not notice another traveler on the road. "Well, stranger, my name is Prince Nak, the son of Timek, the king of the Dinkim, and you are welcome to travel with me if you like, especially since it looks as if this road will never end." "Thank you, Nak, or should I say Prince Nak. My name is Ubin, and I am a simple traveler." Nak and Ubin traveled together and became quick friends. Nak told Ubin all about himself and why he was so far away from his land. Ubin took an interest in the young man and decided to travel with Nak if he would permit it. Nak agreed, and they continued walking. This was the longest and straightest road that Nak had ever seen. Eventually, they began to see villages off in the distance, and every now and then they would pass people. In time, they noticed off in the distance a woman carrying a bundle of sticks on her head, but she suddenly fell and hit the ground hard. Nak and Ubin ran to her aid. Nak tried to help her up, but she could not stand. "Ubin, I think that she has broken her ankle. We will have to help her make it to her village so that she can be helped." Ubin stood up and gently moved the prince to the side and looked at the lady's ankle. He reached to his belt and opened a pouch and pulled out a silvery dust, rubbed it in his hand, and then applied it to the lady's ankle. All the while the woman was screaming in pain, but as Ubin rubbed, the screams decreased. When Ubin finished, the woman looked up at him and stood up and started hopping around. The prince and the lady both were amazed. "My ankle feels better than ever." Smiling and dancing to test out her ankle, "Good sir, what do I owe you for this healing?" Ubin said with a smile and a bow of his head, "Ma'am, you owe me nothing. Take it as a gift of respect. But if you wanted to give me one of these sticks, I would gladly take it." The woman hugged the prince and then Ubin. "You healed my ankle, and all you want is one of these sticks? Help yourself." Ubin went through the bundle of sticks, checking them for sturdiness by whipping them in the air. When he finally found the one he wanted, he smiled. He smiled like a child with a new toy. The woman then gathered all of her sticks and continued on her way, and so did Ubin and the prince. As they walked for a few miles, the prince finally asked a question that was burning on his mind. "Ubin, what are you going to do with that stick?" Ubin looked at the prince with a smile and a twinkle in his eyes, answering with a poem. "My new brother, on this journey of trust and respect, know that the answer you seek is not ready yet, but with patience and a soul that's free, by the end of our quest, you will see." Prince Snack began laughing along with Ubin. Ubin, you are a strange soul. Their journey continued until they reached a small city. Between the two of them, they were able to raise enough money to get something to eat and get a place to rest for the night. When morning came, they rose to continue on their quest. They passed through a city market, and performing for all to see was a puppeteer and his puppets. He sat on a chair with the puppet on his lap telling jokes. The crowd, along with our travelers, were enjoying the show. When out of the crowd, a dog runs up, and the puppeteer runs up to the puppeteer and jumps on his lap, knocking the puppeteer down and mauling the puppet. The dog pulled the head of the puppet and was about to finish tearing the body up. When the puppeteer grabbed his sword and was about to strike the animal down, Ubin witnessed what was happening and jumped up to stop the man from striking the dog with his sword. "Stop! Do not hurt the dog." Ubin stood in between the man and the dog, holding his hands out to stop the man who was shouting, "This dog has destroyed my livelihood. How am I supposed to feed my family?" The man was protesting in anger. Ubin finally calmed him down by asking one question. "Will killing this dog bring back your livelihood?" The man grew silent. And sat down in frustration as Ubin continued walking toward the puppet lying in pieces. He bent down, looking at the puppet, and went to his knees and started putting the pieces of the puppet back together. Let us use our time to find a solution to your problem rather than focusing on the ignorance of the dog. Then Ubin reached into his pouch and took a pinch of the silver powder out of his bag, putting some in his palm and rubbing his hands together vigorously. He began to put the pieces of the puppet back together, applying attention to the damaged areas. The puppet sat silent for a few seconds, but eventually, not only did the pieces stay together, the puppet jumped up and started dancing without any assistance. The puppet then ran and jumped into the man's lap and began their routine again. At first, the man was shocked and terrified, but he quickly got adjusted to the puppet. As Ubin and the prince began to leave, the man put the puppet down and ran to catch Ubin. "Sir, I did not get to thank you for that miracle. What do I owe you?" Ubin shaking his head and smiling. "Sir, you owe me nothing. Take it as a gift of respect. But if you wanted to give me that sword, I would gladly take it." The man, shocked by Ubin's statement, started laughing and pulled the sword from his belt. "Sir, you have just made me rich with this magic puppet, and all you want is this old sword? Take it along with my blessings." Ubin and the prince continued walking for a great distance before the prince finally asked a question that was burning in his mind. "Ubin, what are you going to do with that sword?" Ubin looked at the prince and started laughing and then said his poem. My new brother, on this journey of trust and respect, know that the answer you seek is not ready yet. But with patience and a soul that is free, by the end of our quest, you will see. Prince Snack began laughing with Ubin. "Ubin, you are a strange soul." The journey continued for a few more days, and they eventually came within the view of a great city. They quickened their pace so that they could make it to the city with enough time to eat and find a place to sleep before nightfall. Just before they entered the gate of the city, Prince Snack noticed some beautiful birds circling and playing in the skies. The song that was coming from them was beautiful, and Snack just stood and listened. Ubin came and stood beside him and looked up and smiled. "Young prince, they are singing a poem to the universe." The prince, hearing Ubin, looked at his friend with a questioning smile. "What?" "Yes, if you really listen, you can hear the poem. Look at that one right there." Pointing almost directly above them, just at that moment, the bird Ubin pointed at stopped mid-flight and fell towards the earth. If Ubin hadn't pushed the prince out of the way, the bird would have landed directly on him. Ubin walked over to the fallen bird, kneeled over it, looked at it intently. Reaching into his bag, he took some of the silver dust, placed it in his palm, and began rubbing his hands together. When he was done, he rubbed the dust into the bird, and incredibly, the bird jumped up, walked around, and then jumped onto Ubin's shoulder. As they started walking towards the gates of the city, the bird stayed on Ubin's shoulder. Right before they entered the gate, the prince asked Ubin a question that had been burning in his heart. Ubin, what are you going to do with that bird? Ubin, looking at the prince shocked, began to laugh and responded with a poem. My new brother, on this journey of trust and respect, know that the answer you seek is not ready yet. But with patience and a soul that's free, by the end of our quest, you will see. The prince, looking at his friend, started laughing with him. Ubin, he said, you are a strange soul. That is the end of the first part of this book. Continue listening and we will continue with the second part. The title of the book is The Seven Sticks, The Secret of the Millennium 7 by Hatem Giami, read by the author.